Hey, what's up everybody? It's Ryan Miller checking in with GST's YQMA episode number 6, continuing our trend with bulking, building, and off-season gains. I have a lot of questions I want to get through today, so we're going to jump into Erica J's question right away. She's actually an online training and nutrition client of mine, and she's wondering about the optimal or ideal rate of gain during a building phase. In general, males should look at 2 to 3 pounds per month, not per week, per month. And if you extrapolate that out, you're looking at 24 to 36 pounds per year. Now, females, generally, you're gonna shoot for a little bit lower monthly gain in that 1 to 2 pounds per month range. And if we extrapolate that out again per year, which I like to do because really training and nutrition, they're long-term goals. So if we think about building a body over a few years, females, you're looking at a rate of gain of about 12 to 24 pounds per year. Now, you might think that those sound like small numbers or big numbers. If you think that they sound small, just think about gaining that amount of pounds over a 2 or 3 year period. I mean, you're really looking at some serious weight gain there. And typically off seasons don't last for years. I mean, it's totally normal to have a 1 year off season, an 18-month off season. I mean, when I started training, I had a bulking phase of 5 years straight. I mean, I never really was concerned with weight loss at all. It was all about gaining for me. And so you can get those people that have extended off seasons, but let's just talk, 2 years here. You're looking at a male gaining anywhere from 48 to 72 pounds over a 2 year straight bulking period. And then you have females looking at gaining anywhere from 24 to 48 pounds over a 2 year bulking season. If those numbers freak you out, just remember that you can always shut down your building phase at any time. You can always do an aggressive shortcut to really chop off maybe 5 to 15 pounds. That's always a possibility. So Erica J, you're looking at 2 to 3 pounds per month for males and 1 to 2 pounds per month for females as an ideal rate of weight gain in the off season. All right, this next question, not sure if he's serious, but hey, he could be serious. Stephen L, he's wondering if he can eat a Pizza Hut thin crust pizza every single night during his building phase. The short answer is yes. Now the long answer is yes if it doesn't put you in too big of a surplus where you're getting the effects that you don't like. Now that would be excessive weight gain. That's the only effect that you really wouldn't like if you got into too big of a surplus. By all means, have your Pizza Hut pizza on a nightly basis. Okay, next question is from Brandon O. He wants to know, are refeeds typical during a building phase? Now, refeeds in general are used for 2 primary reasons. Reason number 1 is to help regulate fat loss hormones when in a long-term cutting phase or using a more aggressive approach that might down-regulate certain fat loss hormones. Refeeds help to increase those to optimal and normal levels. Now, the second reason is that refeeds are used to refill or replete depleted glycogen stores. So when you have a period of lower carbs, the muscle glycogen stores in your body are going to slowly deplete because you're going to use them during training and you're not actually eating enough glucose to refill those stores to their maximal capacity. Now, the refeed would be a period of high carbs, high glucose, which would in turn replete or refill those muscle glycogen stores. Now that we know the 2 main reasons for including refeeds in your diet, you can see that these problems are not problems that are typical during a building phase. Usually you're consuming more than enough carbs and more than enough protein and fat to keep those fat loss hormones regulated. So you really don't need a refeed during a building phase for that reason. And then obviously, since you're consuming higher carbs during your off season, your muscle glycogen stores are not going to be depleted on a regular basis. So really refeeds, no, they're not necessary during a building phase. All right, next question is coming to us from Brian C. Brian is a local car freak just like me, and sometimes I see his car at at the Minnesota Cars and Coffee meetups. And so this is where I know Brian from. He's not a client yet, but hey, you never know. If you need some nutrition help, Brian, you know who to ask. Brian is actually wondering how to bulk without getting a belly. So basically he wants to know about how to build without getting fat. Now, if we look at the main foundational concept of building, it's to be in a calorie surplus. Now, you can have a small surplus and you can have a big surplus. Now, as your surplus grows, what also is going to grow is your belly and your fat stores. Okay, you're going to store more fat per period of time as you're moving to a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger surplus. So Brian, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you track your intake, which I just talked about the importance of that in YQMA number 4. Track your intake and your scale weight so you can see if I consume this many calories, I gain this many pounds per week. Take that back to the answer to my first question in this video and try to gain around that 2 to 3 pound per month mark. What that can do for you is it can maximize your lean tissue gains and minimize your fat gains, okay? If you're in a surplus that's too big and you notice that you can clearly see that you're putting on fat too fast, since you're tracking your intake, you can make a logical adjustment down, decrease your rate of gain, continue to gain lean tissue, and slow that fat gain down. So that is really what you need to do, Brian. Now, the last question for the day here is from Eric D, and he is asking a lot of questions lately, and what he's wondering about is actual training, not necessarily nutrition, but actual training methods to grow during the off season. He's wondering about total volume, specifically number of sets per muscle group per week. Now, he asked me to talk about my experience, my personal experience, so I'm just going to talk about my personal experience. And to be honest, a lot of people are recommending full body splits, training every body part 3 times a week or more. Now, my personal experience is I have, for the most part, always trained one muscle group 1 time per week. And my training volume has generally been pretty low. Now, I thought about this. I tried to think way back, and then I thought back, halfway into my lifting career, and then up until just a few years ago. You may be surprised about this, but I've actually usually stayed within 6 sets to 12 sets per muscle group per week. Now, the reason that I feel like I can do this is because I'm using great foundational concepts applied to those sets. And when you're doing that and when your training is super effective, just because the concepts you're using are super effective, it's quality over quantity. And that's what I feel works well for me. Now, a couple years ago, I started working with my GST program in a higher frequency variation. And I found that really the results are about equal. I mean, I would say that I'm growing slightly, but when you're heavily experienced, growth slows. And if you can put on an extra 1 to 2 pounds of muscle per year, I mean, you're doing great. And that's the stage that I'm in. Now, I can't say for myself whether or not I would have grown faster if I'd hit training at a higher frequency when I was younger or just starting. Maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I grew pretty fast and I got big pretty fast, just hitting it hard 1 time per week per muscle group. And I think there's multiple ways to go about training. But Eric, you asked about my way to train, and that's the way I do it. That's the way I did it for a long time. And then up until a couple years ago, now I'm hitting muscle groups twice per week. But when I say twice per week, it's honestly still with that same amount of training volume, that's 6 to 12 sets per week per muscle group. So I'm definitely a low volume responder, and I love that because I can go in the gym and I can get some really effective sets and I don't have to be there for hours. All right, it's time for me to hit another set. I've got some overhead dumbbell presses that are just waiting for me, so I need to check out. This has been GST's YQMA episode number 6 on bulking, building, and off-season gains. Keep the questions coming, and I'll keep answering them. Thank you very much.